episode 7. Thank you, Paolo, for this one. That's I don't know what we're going to do with this, but anyway, it was a surprise gift waiting for me when we came back from Ignite, so which was slightly weird. I didn't order anything from Amazon, but you have a package. Anyway, welcome everybody, episode 7 of SharePoint Dev Weekly, and this time it's me, Waldek, and we have another visitor, so we're planning to have a visitor for the upcoming weeks as well. Well, we'll see. In 2 weeks I will be on family vacation, so Waldek, you will need to take care of this by yourself.
Awesome.
By the way. But anyway, so this time we have a visitor, Elio. Elio, can you do a quick intros on your side?
Hello, everyone. I'm Elio Struyf from Belgium, and I'm working on modern Valo. So working for damn. I lost my thing. Yeah, so I'm working for Valo Intranet. So.
Yes. It is a modern or classic. Anyway, doesn't matter.
So
it is
my
modern.
first appearance, already a blooper.
Yes.
Take 2.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, we are not editing this video, so there we go. We got that one recorded. So now, last week we had Ignite, and we moved on this new schedule. So we're recording these always on Monday, and then the Dev Weekly goes out on Tuesday. So we realized that quite a lot of people actually are writing blog posts and everything else on weekend. So getting stuff recorded on Monday based on what people are writing is always good. So we get stuff out on Tuesday. Just say, why is it Tuesday? Why not Wednesday? I don't know. Why not? I don't know. Anyway, last week was Ignite, still suffering from jet lag or a small jet lag, so I don't have that much problems with that. Apparently, Erwin had some problems with his jet lag. He was complaining.
Which is why he couldn't join the show, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he
He's
couldn't
still
join the show.
sleeping now.
Luckily, we got him covered on the back at least. So we asked him again. He couldn't join. We found a picture of him being like 12-year-old. So that's slightly different looking Erwin from the past. So,
Yeah, that's
anyway.
Erwin after the jet lag.
Yes. Oh, that's a good point. That is a good point. Anyway, so Elio, let's start with you. So what have you done last week related on SharePoint Dev? I do know what's your answer, but anyway.
Nothing.
I think I haven't touched any code editor, or I've touched one during a session. Me and 2 other guys have done at Ignite.
Yeah. How was the session? We did a session with me, Elio, and Paolo. And how was the session and Ignite from your perspective? So what was the common kind of a feeling?
Yeah, very good actually. It was my very first speaker engagement at Ignite, so I was very excited for it. And at least we got 10 minutes of talk, me and Paolo, during a session with Vesa. That's not always
that is a lot. That is a lot, exactly.
So we had strict timings in our session. So,
yeah. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. So the session structure was basically me being a host and then inviting people to do demos. So then we ended up on that one. So everybody had their own demos and all of that related on what we do in SharePoint PnP. The scores on that one is pretty high. So it's looking really good.
And I also saw that you guys danced.
Yes, we did actually dance. We should probably put the video. We can put the video in here in a smaller section. How we're dancing. But yeah, that was like 5 minutes before the session, right? But there was
we
nice
had some fun
background music. So our timings are slightly off, so we need to practice that slightly.
Yeah, next time.
Yeah. But what was interesting on last week, and Elio can absolutely confirm this, a lot of people in a PnP booth. We had a PnP SPFX booth all the time, people walking in, asking questions around SharePoint Dev. It's really cool to see the kind of excitement around the modern ways of doing customization. So
there was a lot of...
So to what extent did you guys get questions about, let's say, the classic way of doing things versus SPFX?
We got all sorts of questions. So in the beginning of the week, it was more like, what is SharePoint Framework? I don't know.
Wow, really?
People that were still on SharePoint 2010, and they came by and they asked, is SharePoint Framework already something for me, or should I start with it?
Yes, it is, after you migrated.
Yeah, indeed. So it's not that it's simple questions, because people that live in an on-prem environment getting them converted over to a SharePoint Online, that's fairly hard. People ask, where can I find resources? What are good resources to follow up all these new things? And then after our session, people came by and then were starting to ask the more difficult questions around provisioning, around SharePoint Framework. How do I do this and this and that? Connecting with web API, securing that, and so on. So it was a mix of both. So there was, a good direction.
And I would say the growing interest on the modern customization, and probably one of the obvious reasons, definitely for that one, was that we made a lot of engineering announcements, also outside of SharePoint Framework, obviously. So the modern communication sites announcements and intranet announcements and all of that stuff, and that's like opening up people to think that, well, wait a minute, so the modern supports all of these. I actually want to go there, because now there's even more capabilities supported in modern rather than in classic. In many cases, and modern is natively responsive and a lot of that stuff, a lot of other stuff, advantages as well. So people are getting more interested, and then the developers realize that, well, wait a minute, I need to catch up. So how do I do this stuff in the modern side? So luckily we have great training material available, and if that's not enough, you could go to Voitanos, right? Just to promote AC as well.
Plug.
AC, you owe me one. But it wasn't, so at least in the office extensibility area, it felt like our booth was the one where we had the most people. To be fair, and the whole team was kind of keeping the booth as the headquarters in the Ignite. So we went for a session, we came back and hang in the booth. So there was all the time like 3 to 4 people hanging in booth, but typically what we do in Ignite. So that was fun. Waldek, you were not
also the car.
Yeah. Oh, really? What?
Yeah, that cool Jeep that was there. Maybe it was had something to do with that.
I have no idea what was actually in the big Jeep.
So in the keynote, they announced something around a humanitarian, what was it? IoT for humanitarian needs. Yeah. And then they showed up the Jeep. Where you can have Azure Stack, where there is no internet connection. And that Jeep was next to our booth. So probably the direction was also for that Jeep.
No. It was all SharePoint Framework,
Yeah.
Humanitarian
there
was
a
super
Jeep,
important.
but
Exactly.
Yeah, but it was PMP branded.
Yeah, sure.
Stickers, right?
Yeah. Who have put all of these PMP stickers to this Jeep? So Waldek, you were not in Ignite, so what did you do?
No, I wasn't there. Well, so I first tried to follow up on all the announcements, but there were so many. It was like coming like announcement after announcement. It was like, and there are talks in parallel. I don't know how many talks there were in total, but a lot. And there is no, I mean, you physically cannot catch up and keep up even with anything, right? So I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to read some articles after that, see some images, roadmap slides, just to catch up after that, because it's, as much as I'd love to keep up with everything, it's just too much.
Yeah, indeed. Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, last week, I wasn't at Ignite, so that gave me some time off to do some other things because everybody else was. So the cool thing is I've worked on the extension that we published the week before that. I think there was a VS Code extension that allows you to more easily add information for the tenant-wide deployment of extensions. Yep. So there was a bug there that I fixed. Mikael helped me with fixing to find the bug.
What do you mean? You made a bug? No. What?
No, so actually, it was by design and just didn't work on Windows.
Exactly.
He wanted to give himself some extra.
Yeah, he held it wrong. No. And then another thing we work on is improving the support for upgrading SPFX projects with CLI. So we have that, and we currently support the latest version of SPFX available, which is as we recorded now, version 1.6. And we did some additional improvements so that the upgrade is faster, smoother, there are fewer steps, and we just improved that. Those sort of thing. And then another thing which is coming, which is really cool, is something that we've worked on at Rancor since, I think, May, maybe even earlier, is to have a connector for Microsoft Flow then that lets you analyze whatever scripts or files or pages you have with Rancor. So imagine you have a piece of script, you update that, or you upload that to library, and then using Flow, you can pass that on to Rancor, have it analyzed. You will get a report showing you whether there is something wrong in it or not. And I mean, in Flow, your inputs and outputs there are many of them. It can be document library, it can be email, it can be Azure Blob, whatever you want. And then once you have the report, you can give it to you can store that in OneDrive, you can send it to email, create task template and whatnot. So it's really cool, and that's coming really soon. So that's also a cool thing that we worked on a bit the last week. Now that everybody was at Ignite and didn't ask anything, so.
just out of curiosity, obviously, if I would be John Levesque or somebody else, it's like, oh, that's really super cool, and it is super cool. Not saying that it's not super cool for me. And now, what was the complexity and how hard was it to implement a connector for Flow?
So the interesting part is that if you think about the way it works, is that the connector is basically a thing that points to an API that you host elsewhere.
Yeah.
So complexity is, for example, in our case, the file that we get might be a binary, or it might be script, HTML, CSS, script. But as such, we always have to treat it as binary stream because you might give it a zip.
Yeah.
At that point, there are no docs how to get binary into a stream and send it over to an API. It's like how you do that. And there's also you cannot look at another connector and see how it's built because there are no examples of that. So figuring out that part.
Sure, but that's kind of Rancor specific thing. But in general,
I can imagine,
if somebody is looking into having a connector available and exposing that to the Flow, how difficult was it? And I understand that specific thing as well. So
I mean, once you have an API, you just go to Flow, create new connector, you go through a few steps, and it's done. But
that's then available for everybody else. So
there are a few things, right? So by default, you start with creating a connector for yourself. You test that and approve it, and then you can share that inside your org.
Yeah.
And you can do it directly like flip, done.
Yeah.
If you want to have that available for everybody, then you have to apply for approval at Microsoft, and then it's being approved, tested, verified, and all that.
Review process, and it's almost like a store of connectors.
Yes, it is.
Cool.
It is.
Because I'm interested, kind of curious. So, but can a connector has a price tag behind of that, or is it just exposing that from a UI? It's exposing that from a UI.
Right? So there are.
How did we end up on having this discussion? I don't know.
So when you build a connector, I mean, and that is interesting because there is some potential for SPFX as well with that connecting Flow and all that, right?
Yes.
So if you think about it, there are a few ways you can go around with connector. It can be anonymous, meaning anybody can call it, or when you create it, you have to specify a function key.
Yeah.
And at that point, you could think like,
absolutely.
Or the same way in our case at Rancor, what we do is that the connector works for everybody.
Yeah.
And we offer additional property, which is the license key. If you don't specify the license key, you only will get a summary result. If you give the license key, then you will get the whole thing.
So in the same way, you could have let's say an app source solution, SPPKT file as a SharePoint framework solution, which then enabled in a tenant if you have a tenant level license key enabled or something like that.
Then offers additional.
Sure, I'm just brainstorming live on the Dev Weekly, but obviously we have a lot of discussions on the store and everything else happening on the background. But it's interesting to hear. I haven't had a chance to have a really look on the Flow and how the store model actually works on the Flow, because that's technically not on my table, even though I'm highly interested in.
But it's really cool. The thing that I love about Flow is that, I mean, in the past, you would have to do all of that in code. I mean, I used to build function in Azure that would receive a call from API, put some things in a table, put some things in a queue, and an email, store some things in a list, Now you just you drag and drop a few blocks in Flow and it's done. Like no lines of code. It's so much easier, more robust as well.
But it's almost like when you think of it, and it's almost like an evolution, even from let's say a visual. At some point in SharePoint, we used Visio to draw the workflow, right?
Correct.
And then we imported the Visio file to SharePoint Online using a SharePoint Designer way back, and then that came to be the actual workflow or the process. And this is now almost like the same idea, but much more fluent and much more advanced. So, absolutely. So it's an evolution of steps, absolutely. So not that, no, SharePoint Designer was so cool. I want it back.
All right. So on that note, we switch to announcements.
Interdev. No, okay. Let's go to the actual slides. Nobody remembers Interdev except me, so that's fine. Where is my?
I don't think I was born like that when it was available, no?
That is true. Let me see if I can only see two screens. What's wrong with, how do I flip to that screen? That's actually pretty interesting.
I think we even see more screens than you are.
Yeah. There are at least two on your desk, then there's one. Sorry, three.
Let's see. I can see on the screen 1 and 2, which is probably those two, which is actually super weird. I can see those. Interesting. So let me try this first. And then I'm going to stop.
We can see your desktop.
Yay! How did... I don't
understand. Stop presenting and we see your screen.
Yeah.
So let me actually put this one then in here.
There you go. Yes.
Okay, this is better than nothing, except the camera is over there. But now we should be a small guys on the feed, so we should be.
Yes.
So I'll just concentrate on this one. Way too many screens. 6.
Finally.
3. Yeah, so this is highly confusing, even apparently for Windows 10 or Teams.
So
it didn't show me that screen. Yeah.
So back to one screen.
Yeah. No. Okay, so let's concentrate. So a few of the links. So a lot of actually the stuff what we have this week here. I'm going to actually move you guys away from this screen sharing because most likely that is getting shared as well. Is from Microsoft because there's a lot of announcements which we did during Ignite obviously, and we want to make sure that people are getting what was happening. So first of all, Jeff Teeper released a nice tech community blog post related on new innovations in SharePoint Microsoft 365. Delivering power and simplicity of content collaboration. So, and this really is a great run through of all of the announcements which we actually have done during last week, including the kind of a high level roadmaps and all of that. Now, if I scroll down all the way down, so cool stuff like Themify, really great stuff. So if you have a classic theme site, you want to groupify and themify, that's right. And then potentially Hoopify, right?
The what?
Hoopify, Themify, Hoopify, right? Hoopify. Well, you make it as a site. And then if I scroll all the way down, this one is a really good because it references then all of the specific additional announcements. So there are announcements on the communication side for Valo Intranet. There are announcements on the dev platform side, which we'll have a quick look as well. And then on the business processes and all of that. So really,
and Yammer is 10 years old.
And Yammer is 10 years old. That was actually a good point. Last week there was a 10-year Yammer celebration actually in Ignite. So. Where did you find that Yammer is 10 years old?
All the way down. They're celebrating 10 years, yeah.
That is true.
So we missed a party last week.
There was quite a few parties, yes, indeed. Now, on the dev platform side, so do more with SharePoint development with new capabilities. So this one is in the SharePoint dev blog, obviously. And this is really around explaining, first of all, that 1.6 went live. So the Craft, Calling Craft and Web API is available. We talk about the deployment of web parts and application pages in Microsoft Teams. That's pretty cool, or insanely cool, actually, to be honest, to write exactly the same web part, which works as a web part in SharePoint, or it works to say Teams tab in Teams. And that's basically same tooling and all of that capabilities, and which is, woohoo, absolutely makes sense. Connect component with dynamic data capabilities, so web part component discussion. So basically, you can expose properties and read properties, and there's even dynamic UI elements which are adapting on that. So that's really cool. I have to say, and take 1 minute on this one, it's kind of awkward. Back in 2007 in Build, it was my session, and I announced that we have web part to web part connections, and we never actually shipped that because that was then replaced with the dynamic data. But now it's heading to the GA in 1.7, which is coming officially by end of this year, hopefully sooner than that. But we didn't want to promise like next week. But by end of this year. It's not going to be next week, though, so just to be clear on that.
Well, it depends when you watch the video.
Absolutely. Good point. Good point. Thank you, Mark. Deliver complete applications to application pages. So this one is more, it's the upside down. So basically using the application pages in SharePoint, which are SharePoint, well, the existing solutions, which are in Microsoft Teams. So kind of upside down, not SharePoint customizations in Teams customization also in SharePoint. Then harness more with SharePoint Microsoft Graph. Although the big thing for us is that you can actually hit those Microsoft Graph endpoints in SharePoint Framework easily. Now, other stuff. So we'll add all of these links in the video. Now, related on the stuff that there's quite a lot of announcements in Ignite. Susan Hanley actually created this great presentation, which is capturing all of the announcements, which is really, really cool. So if you go to, and if you don't follow Susan Hanley, please do. Susan, or especially if you're interested on, let's say, governance and business usage of SharePoint and Office 365 and Microsoft 365. But this is a great list of announcements, like SharePoint sites and photo systems, a lot of stuff announced here, what's in top of the mind. So releasing now, end of 2018, first half, and then top of the mind is basically, we haven't yet committed on these. We want to do these, and these are the next things what will happen after we get all of the other stuff shipped as well. But there's really, really, really great stuff up here. Site footer, layout options, additional stuff as well. Now, SharePoint pages and web parts, a lot of cool stuff available. SharePoint Teamwork, Microsoft Teams, so how things work together on that side. SharePoint hub sites, hub site limit increased to 100. That was 2 weeks ago already announced, but again, we're looking into increasing that in the future because some customers are saying the 100 isn't enough. We want more. I'm sure
200.
We can give you more. We can, but isn't it better to actually increase the number one step at a time? So you have always an announcement. It's like, now it's 200. Now it's
180.
It's 187. Anyway. Site branding design, roadmap, good stuff there as well. So how the announcements go, and business applications, Power Apps, integration, view formatting, all of that stuff, better and better functionalities, location column, cool stuff available. And then I think in the ECM side there was something really interesting. Which was the taxonomy REST APIs. Where is it? I can't find it.
What?
I know that it was it's top of the mind section. No, it was actually. No. So sorry for fixing that.
Taxonomy REST.
Was it there?
That's a big thing.
No, it's actually not on that slide, but it is on the one of the blog posts, which is saying that taxonomy REST is coming. So.
Oh, cool.
And it's coming by the end of the year, by the first half.
No, there was no timing. No timing.
No
timing.
So it's top of mind.
Yeah, so it's top of mind.
Yes.
Okay. Like we're thinking about it for a long time already.
Like,
really cool.
Thinking about it, but
really cool.
It takes a lot of thinking.
Now, Stefan Bauer, just moving on the things, we'll put all of the links obviously in the blog post. SharePoint Generator 1.2 is now out, and this is together with the Vue.js integration, so you have the Vue.js option available as well. Really cool stuff.
This is the community generator that extends the one built by Microsoft.
This extends the one which we in engineering.
Not replaces it.
Not a replacement. Extends it. Adds additional capabilities on top of it. So,
like Vue.
With this open source. Like Vue.js, yes. Correct.
And the PHP controls are also integrated in it.
Absolutely. Now, other stuff, this one was interesting, so slightly off topic potentially from a dev platform perspective, but on the other hand, what is dev and what's not a dev? So it's always debatable. SharePoint Modern Pages best practices from Craig. So good stuff on the how do you actually can design your pages, what's possible. You can remove the image, you can modify the pages and different ways of minimizing vertical scroll and all of that. So good article around the modern experiences and how you can change that. Based on modifications in your site. So and there's a lot of stuff here, additional stuff available. Good. Jeff had a really interesting actually Twitter tweet. I noticed this one due to SPFX tag, obviously. So this one was kind of cool because it might be obvious for those who use search all the time or Bing or Google. But he basically here is a link where he is then searching component did mount set state from site github.com SharePoint SPDevFX web part. So if you're looking into an example and you're kind of trying to figure out how would I do X and Y and Z, you can use Google. You can use also GitHub search. But if you're more familiar with Google UI or Bing just as well, I think Bing definitely supports the site option as well. You're able to then target the search on a specific site. So that's really cool. Moving on things, some announcements from SharePoint side. So this one was in a Kathy's do and come on. Who's the designer guy? Blackout. What's his name? Now I feel bad. I feel bad. I will add a note on the video because I'm forgetting.
I think we need to edit this one.
Yeah. We're not editing. I feel so bad now. It's jet lag. Jet lag is the reason. Now, so Kathy and this person, I feel really bad now. They had a nice 20 minutes on the site design options and design model for SharePoint framework. And then in there, we basically announced the space, SP Design Azure Websites.net. We're looking into potentially get this one on the SharePoint Dev portal. But this one really has the design principles and additional details on why and how stuff should be designed related on your web parts and components. Cool looking site, which is now already available.
Yeah. Adam Ford.
Adam Ford. Thank you, Ilya. Thank you. I'm sorry, Adam. I do.
Looked it up. Looked it up. That
sure. That's why there is Bing or Google.
Well, yeah. So I have meetings this week scheduled with Adam, so this is slightly awkward that I forgot about name.
Were you?
But that's typical for me, unfortunately. There's quite a few things up and running, and my memory is horrible. Now on this one from Corey, so jumping away from SharePoint side, this is just a nice kind of SPFX basics, how to get a query string value. So if you have a web part which could be dependent on the query string parameter of the URL, this is showing how you actually get the ID or read the value from the query parameter. So good stuff from Corey. Around that one. Simple things, but this is good. This is good example of the stuff what we've been discussing in the weekly Dev Weekly as well. It doesn't have to be a long article, deep diving exactly how something is being designed. This is a good reminder on, that's how it was actually done. So good stuff to get it logged as well. Other stuff, handling the SharePoint REST API search threshold limit in SPFX. If you're super familiar with REST, it's like, well, duh, but on the other hand, it's not like everybody knows how the SharePoint REST works. And the trick here is to use the start row in the query parameter of the REST call. So you're able to basically say, I want to have results from 500 to 1000 as an example, and then do the paging based on that. Or 100, whatever you actually want to implement your web part. To be fair, now, why would you have a web part which is showing 1000 results? Nobody's going to actually click.
Well, not really. Just because you retrieved it from search doesn't mean you're going to show all of them. You might have some calculation, computation thing where you do random or related articles. You never know.
Absolutely. But there's an API, there's a REST structure how to actually get the next page, so to say.
Yeah.
So. Cool. Enabling multilingual localization in SharePoint framework application from Hubfly guys. Really good stuff explaining how the localization works. In engineering side, we know that we need to get the modern experiences and the communication sides. We're looking into doing the multilingual supports better there in the future as well. So, but in the SPFX side of the wrote. This is explaining how the multilingual works with an example of English US and French as an example. So I think we have few, for example, in SharePoint Starter Kit, we're using multilingual solution. There's translations for multiple languages.
Right.
Then Laura had a really cool, this is one of those kind of hey, this is a really great conference session, actually, to be honest. So what if you would want to expose, we talked about this one, actually, I think it was in a session with AC. What if you want to expose LOB data from on-premises in the SharePoint framework or in the SharePoint Online? So how would you then have the connectivity from the on-premises to the Azure side so that you can serve the information for SPFX web part calling the Azure function or whatever. And this one really walks through the process of using that and enabling that using an Azure relay. So basically you have by default, obviously, you can't connect from the cloud to the on-premises because there's a firewall, which is apparently saying you shall not pass. But if you have a Azure relay, you basically do a two-dimensional connection. This is something which we've been showing in PMP actually already in the past as well, but not in the context of the modern capabilities. You basically have a connection between Azure and a service running in on-prem, which will then do the communications if needed. So you are not explicitly opening up any firewall ports, and so from that perspective, it is absolutely 100% secure. Now, in the session with AC, we talked about the fact that do you actually want to call services from on-prem because you might have then a network latency issues and all of that, or should you get the relevant data to cloud and just expose that data? Again, absolutely debatable. What is that bright light? That's hurting my eye.
We
I know that
all week.
Yellow thing.
It's the yellow thing. Now, two more quickly. So Pram Detjager who's a creator of the SharePoint Client Browser. Absolutely brilliant tool also for developers. So now with the support for SharePoint Server 2019, which we announced the GA coming in October in the Ignite as well. But this one basically gives you then insights of the whole tenant or a farm, and then sites and site collection applications and all of that. And you can deep dive to the level of a field or an item and check the properties. So Pram has really done a great job on this one, and this is he's been building on this for years already.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
For a long time, but it's super valuable, absolutely valuable. And then the final thing, just a reference, because we somehow missed the communications on this one before the Ignite, so this one live just before Ignite, but we keep on promoting this absolutely. But we released this best practices for discovering files and detecting changes at scale. So super important thing related on our REST API documentation and handling. Which we basically explain if you have to scan, rather than scanning the tenant, you would actually add the needed webhooks and events and all of that too, so you know what's happening in a tenant, so you're able to minimize the hits towards the SharePoint Online. And that relates on throttling and optimizing of the code. But added on absolutely on the video notes as well. Cool. Perfect. That's it now. So let me actually flip back on the stop sharing. Let's flip back on the video screen. And Elio, you stopped sharing your video apparently.
Oh, because I don't know.
Like a long way already.
Yeah, I know. Oh, there he is. Now he's back.
There he was.
What happened?
Probably the jet lag in Teams.
Jet lag, yes, on your computer, right?
Yeah, in Teams.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
In Teams.
Cool. Oh, a lot of stuff, but a lot of great stuff again on the community. Obviously, there's a lot of announcements, which we did last week, and it's cool to see how people are then adapting these and started explaining in their own blogs the usage scenarios and how we can use stuff. SharePoint Framework 1.7 was kind of a confirmed. Well, we've been talking about that one in these sessions for quite a long time, but there are no surprises there in that session, to be fair. It's the list of things what we promised to deliver already in the past, but still.
But still, the demos were cool.
Demos were really cool. Yeah. So right now, actually on that session, when we're recording this, the session recording is not available. We will get that session recording available pretty soon. There was a small accident on that session. So the video.
Do explain small accident?
No,
that could go either way.
There was a too much information shared on the screen. So let's put it this way. So we need to modify the video stream to get rid of that. So. But that processing, don't ask why, but apparently that followed on my table as well. So I've been doing the processing this morning, so we'll get it out later today or tomorrow, hopefully. But other than that, Elio, last words. What was the great thing about Ignite? What was the one most brilliant thing what you had stuck your mind?
Oh, I think the discussions. I had so many discussions, so many great ideas for new integration into our product that we are building. So I'm eager to start working again and got some really cool things.
Yeah, makes sense. And Waldek, anything what you have on top of your mind from last week? It's like the one thing.
No, not on top of my mind. I mean, there were so many things that I'm eager to see them shipped. Really, it's like, I mean, we already have a lot, but there is so much more announced. And like Victor said, like, the one thing that he loved, and I think that I agree with him there, the fact that the building blocks that we've seen released over years now come together to form a centralized, cohesive environment. And that allows us to build intranets that help people, and Valo obviously builds on top of that, which takes you even additional step further, right? So I think that that's really cool to see how the building blocks come together to form a product and platform that offers you more.
Yeah. So, and that's basically my feeling. Obviously, I knew what was about to be announced as well, but
really,
it's might have some insights on these things, but still, now it feels like the modern is seriously ready to go. It's production ready. We announced stuff to be available soon. We announced what's coming next, so there's more visibility of what's coming. We know in engineering as well that the modern experiences have been lacking certain critical pieces, but it's all in the pipeline. It's just a matter of getting it out and making sure that it's working properly before pushing it out, obviously, as well. So really cool to see the movement, because obviously SharePoint Dev isn't just about SharePoint Framework. It's also about modern teams,
everything,
everything, because it's all around
Power Apps. Yes, you're just bringing the whole thing together. Yeah,
correct.
Cool.
It's brilliant stuff.
So for you guys, Elio, the next stop you'll be at the SPS Brussels, right?
My next stop is in SharePoint Saturday Milan.
There you go.
That's on next week. That is next week.
And Vesa, you?
My next stop is my Mediterranean cruise with family. So
but the work. I mean work.
Oh, you mean work?
Work.
Let's see. I'm in the Harlem. So the Connect
in Harlem. Yes.
Yeah.
Harlem.
Beginning of November.
Beginning of November.
Cool.
So
cool.
See you there. What about you, Waldek? Where are you?
I'm going to be SPS Brussels, then Harlem, then ESPC, and then Christmas.
Oh, Christmas is coming. Excellent. I think.
All right, guys.
That's it for this one. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.